So welcome to the Get Licensed to Build workshop. This informational webcast is presented by the Contractor State License Board, the California government agency responsible for regulating the state's construction industry. I'm Rick Lopes, and I'll be joined today by Anna Rodriguez. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning, Rick.
Okay, it's information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. While the webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of the law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during the webcast are for informational purposes only. If you have questions about the application of the law or for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who is familiar with California construction law, or review the 2020 edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download that for free on the CSLB website, or you can purchase it directly from the publisher, which is LexisNexis. Okay, because of the COVID-19 health emergencies, all of our test centers are temporarily closed, but we will continue, and we are continuing the process of application. So there's no reason for you to wait to submit your application. You can download this presentation from our website and follow along, or you can watch it now and download it later. The presentation includes links to expanded information that'll help you during the application process. And we'll kind of note on that, but we do have some links throughout the presentation. All you need to do is to go to our homepage, which is cslb.ca.gov. Right on a bar up at the top of the page where it talks about this Get Licensed to Build workshop, there's the spot where you can actually just download it. And we'll keep that up for the next day or so at least, and maybe look for another spot, but please go there and download it. There is good information. Also too, as we eventually plan, once we get this right, we'll actually be able to download it to our YouTube page, and we will be doing this again in the future too. Okay, so here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We'll take you through the process for applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license, the types of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications.
We'll also give you tips to help fill out your applications, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications. Fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check as well. We'll help you get ready for the exam or exams you'll need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued. Things like a bond and insurance. At the end of today's presentation, we will do our best to answer all of your questions. You can email us your questions right now. The address is social@cslb.ca.gov. Please try to keep your questions general in nature so that everyone can benefit. Don't worry if you don't get a chance to write that email address down. It was social@cslb.ca.gov. We're going to keep it right on our screen. If you see, it's right there on our screen throughout the workshop. It'll be on there, and you can email us at any time.
Okay, so go ahead and let's get started now. First, who needs a license? Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more, and that total includes both labor and materials. Now, the law does not let you break it down into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours for the job totals $500 or more, you're going to need a contractor's license. So what is the definition of a contractor? You see it here on the law, and you'll note that much of the CSLB license law is in what's called the Business and Professions Code. In this case, it is section 7026.1. We do have a link on the page as well. Here it is. Any person, consultant to an owner building firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. So in other words, you don't just have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor's license just to advertise that you can do the construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if it totals $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself why you should get a license. Here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows that you've taken the steps to get licensed and you are serious about your career choice. Also, it allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work that you do. There is a value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanic's lien clause.
Boy, what a mess.
Next, you don't have to look over your
Hi,
shoulder.
Amber.
Excuse me, please, can
Next.
everybody else, if you can be sure to just mute your lines, please.
Oh, really?
Except for Anna. Yes, if you can just mute the line, just
Okay.
listen in, please.
I'm muted. I'm muted.
Nope.
Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with the fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and/or a $5,000 fine and potential administrative fine anywhere in between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in the state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number.
So remember, there's no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
So next we're going to talk about what are the minimum qualifications you'll need to get your license. First, you must be at least 18 years old. Second, you must have either a valid social security number or a valid individual taxpayer identification number or ITIN. Every license must have a qualifier, someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. You can qualify the license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journey person, a foreperson, a supervising employee, or a contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can have a qualifier for the license who has the required experience. Well, we will spend a lot of time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in just a few minutes.
Okay, in some cases, college education, either a bachelor or associate's degree, may count towards meeting some of those experience requirements. Completing an apprenticeship program may count towards meeting some of those experience requirements as well. Also, some of your military service may count. Towards the bottom of the screen, you will see a link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program where you can learn more. The license qualifier must also pass 2 different exams, both taken on a computer at one of CSLB's 8 test centers around the state. One exam is on California business law. The other is in the specific trade covered by the license. We also have a limited specialty license, which we'll discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the business and laws exam.
As we mentioned, the qualifier must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both of the exams, but it has to be in a very specific situation. We recommend that you look at CSLB's website for more information on those specific situations. We have included a link at the top of the page. The qualifier must also undergo the criminal background check. We will go more into depth in that in just a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all the workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you're trying to get a B, general building contractor license, and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as a project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
Okay, the next thing you're going to need to know to determine before you apply for your license is which type of business entity that you're going to be. And there are 4 types. The first is sole ownership, where the owner or the responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. About 64% of the contracting businesses in California are sole ownerships. Second is a corporation, where either the current officers, designated as the responsible managing officer, or the responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. About 32%, just under a third of our licensees are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the 2 general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as the qualifier. It's about 2% of our licenses. Finally, a limited liability company, or a LLC, where a responsible managing member responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as a qualifier. Only about 0.5% of California construction companies are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filling out your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a link to our classifications list at the bottom of the screen. First, we have the Class A, or General Engineering Contractors. These are the contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. An A contractor are the ones that build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are just over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is our B, or General Building Contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California, with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry, unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is our C, or Specialty Contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of specialized building trades or crafts. Examples of this class include the C10, which is our electrical contractors, C20, HVAC contractors, our C27 contractors, which are landscaping contractors, C33 plumbing contractors, C39 roof contractors, C46 solar contractors, C53 swimming pool contractors, and these are just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the C61/D49 Tree Service Limited class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
Okay, here's the 2 forms that you're going to need. They're both on our website. The one on the left is the license application. The one on the right is the certification of the work experience. You can get these on the CSLB website. Again, we do have links there at the bottom of the page when you download the presentation. And we're going to give you a closer look at the different sections on that form a little bit later. Okay, so let's break down the steps of the application process for you. First, you need to identify who's going to be the qualifier for your license. If you're an RME, in other words, Responsible Managing Employee qualifier, you need to determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are 2 different options. One is the application for the original contractor's license. The second is the application for the original contractor's license with the examination waiver. And that's if somebody else is going to be qualifying, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The next step is determining your company's name. Take a look at the application for some examples. So some things to keep in mind about your company name. The name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than the one you're getting. So for example, if you're going to be a C36 plumbing license, you can't have a company name that's John Smith Plumbing, Construction, Heating, and Drywall. So you got to only be able to have plumbing in that, or you can't imply you do something you're not licensed for. For corporate and LLC names, they must match exactly the name registered with the Secretary of State's office. And the names on your Secretary of State's registration must be listed on your CSLB application. So if you're a corporate or LLC, that's where you need to pay attention to and make sure your name matches.
Next, you want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualifications. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. There is a link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have had an honorable discharge, and be sure to include a copy of your military DD 214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic but very important. You want to proofread any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all the necessary fields. Second, you don't want to forget to sign and date your application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your examination. If so, complete a request form and submit your application. We'll talk about the use of a translator a little later.
Okay, next is a closer look at the fingerprint requirements, which are used for your criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on their type of business entity. All applicants, each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, and all home improvement salespersons. So if you're in California, you must submit those fingerprints electronically with what's called live scan. With the COVID-19 health emergency, many live scan locations are temporarily closed. Fortunately, there are many sites that are still open. The Attorney General's office is doing a great job keeping an updated list broken down by county. We've got a link here at the bottom of the page you see there in orange, or you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and then do a search for live scan. You'll see we have a link at the bottom of the page also for more information on the fingerprints, criminal background checks on our CSLB websites. And if you're out of state, it's going to be tough for you to get us your fingerprints. That's because you must actually submit hard copies of them, not electronic copies, the old-fashioned way. So that's going to take anywhere for the Department of Justice and the FBI 3 to 6 months to actually process paperwork for out-of-state applicants. So when things settle down with the COVID health emergency, you may actually want to consider traveling to California to get the live scans done here. Yeah, nothing we have control over, but that's just the way it works if you're an out-of-state person applying for a license.
What happens if you have any criminal convictions? CSLB may deny your license for following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers. They are the nature and the severity of the crime, the amount of time that has passed since the conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates criminal convictions within 7 years of the application date. Unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. So question number 11 on the application asks if you have ever been convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony. If you have, you're going to want to go ahead and check the yes box. And then we have a separate form, a disclosure statement that can be found on our website that you'll want to fill out. And you're going to want to fill out one of those disclosure forms for every misdemeanor or felony that you think will appear on your background. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications for criminal convictions.
Yeah, it's much better to get that information to us in advance of the criminal background check. And it's no guarantee. And as you see, we only deny 1% of the applications based on criminal convictions. So it's not going to automatically put you out. Okay, our next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop. It's how you demonstrate work experience on your application. The license qualifier needs 4 years of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. That means at least 4 years of experience since 2010. The experience must be at no less than the journeyman level or as a foreman, a supervising employee, a contractor, or even an owner-builder. A journeyman is described as an experienced worker who is fully qualified, as opposed to a trainee and can perform trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
There's a limited amount of space on the application where you're going to be able to show your certified work experience. So feel free to use additional pages if you need to, and you can just attach them at the end of your work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience forms as you need to prove the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Remember to be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person certifying your work describes the actual work you performed and the dates in which you performed them. And you don't want to simply cut and paste. We're going to be offering you some examples of good and bad experience certification that you can use examples. However, we don't want you to simply cut them and paste them. We do want your certifier to use their own words. We will now be providing some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. These are just examples.
Okay, so at the top of the chart, you're going to see, because this is the next few slides, this is how to read them. At the top of the chart, you're going to be seeing the license classification and the type of experience that you're trying to demonstrate. The first example is going to be for demonstrating journeyman experience. The overall theme that we want to keep repeating is the more specific your description, the better. And note, the work experience form should be completed by your certifier. That's someone who has knowledge or has observed your work experience for the classification you're applying for.
Okay, so here our first example is for a Class B general building contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for a journey person level experience is to be very specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work, and it could be something like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior and exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Something that would be unacceptable would be a description like this, something more generic. Residential general building trade. For a four-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and/or supervisor experience. So here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job sites performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. So for slide 27, for supervising employee experience, what we're talking about is we want something more descriptive. And so we would like you to include something, for example, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finished carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical. Something that we would not find acceptable would be something more generic, like residential general building trades. For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of the work that you performed either out of the state or on military projects, projects on federal lands, or work performed for a government entity. Applicants can qualify if they've performed the work as an out-of-state contractor, a journey person, a four-person, or a supervising employee. We do want to give you one tip, is to be very specific about the duties and the employment circumstances. Now we're on slide number 30. This example has to do with the C27 landscaping contractor. First, for the experience at a journeyman level, what we would want to see the best description available, the best description your certifier could provide would be: Jane performed landscaping construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be gardening, yard maintenance, planting. As you can see, the theme is that we want more details. We want to know exactly the work that you were performing. For a C27 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a four-person would be something like: Jane oversaw other staff at job sites performing landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable description, again, would be something like this: gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. Now on slide 34, for a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. A best description would be: as a construction lead on multiple projects, applicants supervised landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage light, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. Something unacceptable here for the supervising employee would be something like gardening, yard maintenance, planting. On slide 36, finally, for our out-of-state contractors, you can follow the same guidance that we showed you for the general building contractors. Be sure to include examples of your out-of-state work, as well as for the military or on federal lands and for the government entity jobs. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and your employment circumstances. By law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of our applications. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation that you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation. This supporting documentation is not something that you're going to be mailing in with your application. You're only going to need to provide this documentation if you are asked by a CSLB staff to provide it. We have included a link on this slide to the publication available on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation. So if you'd like to see this, this publication, the link is right on this slide here. If you look at the chart, you can see that the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. Those are documents that we would accept from you in order to provide your experience verification. The second column is for documenting your experience if you've been self-employed. And then the third column is for documentation you would need to, if you were applying for a Class B general building contractor license and need to use owner-builder experience to meet the requirements. Now on slide 38, here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view the publication and you can print it as well. Slide 39 is the final page of acceptable documentation. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather now, just in case you're asked to provide it in the future. Remember, what you're trying to do is demonstrate that you do have the CSLB staff may contact the certifier of experience or other parties just to verify the experience.
Okay, one other note, CSLB gets more than 1,000 applications a month, so our application processing staff has seen it all. So their advice is don't try to get around the rules about taking a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 limited specialty classification. As we mentioned earlier, your C61 limited specialty classes, you only have to take one exam, and that's for the business and law. There's not a trade exam that you have to take, so don't try to get around this by getting a number of different limited specialties. And again, don't copy and paste what you're seeing here today, because they'll know that. Believe me, doing 1,000 of these a month, they've seen everything. Okay, that's the content you'll need to fill out your application. So before getting it to CSLB, be sure to double check and to make sure you didn't miss anything, and be sure to sign and date it as well. And don't forget to include the all-important application fee. That amount is there on the application, and then get it in the mail to CSLB.
Okay, now our next slide, now we're actually going into the application itself. This part here, section 1, is your business name and address. Now that we've gone through all the information you'll need to include, here's a closer look at the application itself. Section 1 here, remember that when you're selecting a business name, you're going to want to make sure that the name you have selected is compatible with the classifications and the entity that you are applying for, and that it's not misleading. If your business is a corporation or an LLC, you will need to make sure that the name you provide in this section matches exactly the business name registered with the Secretary of State. In line 2, you can see that's where you're going to indicate the classification that you are applying for. The mailing address and the phone number that you list on line 3A and 3C, this is what's going to be made public on our website once you're licensed. So once somebody is looking up your license number, line 3A and 3C will be public information. All the other information is just for CSLB use. In the next section, section 2, this is your business entity. If you're applying for a corporation or an LLC, you will need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity which you are applying for. So there in red, it gives you specific instructions for the entity that you're applying. So you'll want to make sure you pay attention to that. In the next section, section 3, it's qualifying individual full legal name and address. This is where you're going to list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is a person who meets the experience requirements and will be responsible for the direct supervision and control of the construction operations. The qualifier is also the person who's going to be taking the exam. On line 6, you're going to list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you're going to be the only person listed on the license, then you would enter 100% on that line. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements, and you will need to make sure that you have listed all the positions depending on the entity you have selected. So for more information, if you need more information on how to fill out this section, page 4 of our application instructions gives more details on how to fill out this section, okay? Line 8 is where you will sign and date your application. The next section is section 4. Here you're going to list the full legal names and addresses of all personnel. If you have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, you'll want to make sure that all personnel that are listed with the Secretary of State are listed in this section here. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in this section here, section 4. The next section, section 5, is a series of yes and no questions, so we're not going to cover those here. This here is section 6. It's listed qualifier, education, apprenticeship, licensure, and military. You may be granted credit towards the 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question number 17 on the application asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certification of completion. You may be granted up to 3 years of credit based on your education. Note that this is not given on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be granted the full 2 years of credit towards your experience requirement, but you will be granted some credit to go towards those 4 years. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed the education. That 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. However, if your degree is in any other language other than English, it has to be translated for us. In the next section is now we're in the certification of work experience. Part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here you're going to list the information for your employer where you gained the experience. If you were self-employed when you gained the experience, you're going to want to make sure that you mark that box on line number 2. If you're applying for a B general construction license and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, you're going to want to mark the box on line number 4. So the next part, part number 2, is the part that's going to be completed by your certifier. In this section, the certifier includes the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you were working on a part-time or full-time basis. Keep in mind that if you were working part-time when you receive the credit, you're only going to be receiving 50% credit for that time, which means you'll need to provide 8 years of experience within the last 10 years to meet the 4-year requirement. On line number 6, your certifier will need to list the duties that you performed or supervised that are considered critical for the classification that you are applying for. You can read a description of our critical duties in our description of classification booklet available on our website. So if you're wondering what we consider critical duties, that's where you're going to want to go. Right on our website, it's the description of classification booklet, and it gives a description for every classification that CSLB offers. Do not copy and paste the description from the booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what it is that CSLB is looking for, what we consider critical duties for each classification. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words, and they need to be as complete and accurate as possible. If you have more than one certifier, or if you worked for more than one contractor, you will need to print out additional certifications of work experience pages. So let's say you need to have one certifier who can vouch for you, let's say for the last 2 years, then they can fill out one certification. Just print out a second certification form, or you can make copies of it and have another person certify another 2 years. As long as it's 4 years within the last 10 years, that's what we're looking for. Remember, applicants can qualify if they performed work as a journey person, a foreperson, or a supervisory employee. And we understand that there may be other individuals who can qualify for a license under different circumstances. If we did not cover your specific situation on the previous slides, please feel free to email us and we will address your specific situation. If you have been working in the industry for the last 4 years or any 4 years within the last 10 years and feel that your experience does meet the requirements, but you aren't sure how to demonstrate that, feel free to send us an email so that we can further discuss your specific situation. Okay. The final part of the work certificate experience is also completed by the certifier. Here is where they're going to list their relationship to you and provide their contact information. Lastly, they will need to sign and date their certification. Note that it does not have to be a contractor that you specifically worked for. So it can be, there's different categories there listed. And so they can go ahead and choose what their relationship is to you, and then they'll sign and date the form. Now we're going to talk about the owner builder general building construction project experience. This form only needs to be completed if you are applying for a B general construction license and you want to receive experience for working on projects that were your own property. A separate form will be required for each project on the property. The experience must be verifiable through building permits, final inspections, and other documentation. You will need to list the building permit number here on line number 6, and on line number 7, you'll need to provide the scope of the project. In box 8, part 2 of 3, in box 8 through 10, this is where you're going to give us more details about the project. What is it exactly that you performed? What kind of work you were doing? The next slide shows part 3 of 3. Question number 11 asks if other general construction contractors worked on the project and what trade they performed. Remember, this information should be as complete as possible and as accurate as possible as well.
Okay, so now you've got your application completed and submitted. How do you check the status of that application? Well, there are 2 resources for you. First is a secured check. You'll need your application fee number and a contractor PIN number to get an update. We'll send you that information after we receive and accept and post your completed application. The second way is to check online for our processing times. Each week we update our website with the date that we receive the paperwork for a specific process. So look for the date being worked on, and then you'll know that the date shown is, if it's after the date that we received your paperwork, it's likely, that doesn't even make sense to me. Let me say that again. So look for the date being worked on and know that the date shown is after the date that we likely received your paperwork, then it's likely that we're already working on it. So in case today's May 11th, and let's say that you sent it to us last week, we should have received it by May 8th. If we're working on things on May 11th, and chances are that we are already working on your paperwork. As you can imagine, CSLB receives hundreds, if not thousands, of documents every day, and we process them in the order that they're received. So be sure to take the extra time getting your application right, so then we don't have to send it back for corrections or to have you start that process again. When your application has been accepted, CSLB will send you a notice to appear for examination and a study guide. You should have your exam notice at least 3 weeks before your exam date. You can schedule your exams at CSLB test centers around California. As we mentioned earlier, all test centers are temporarily closed, but here are the locations. We'd encourage you to take your exams at the closest center to you, and we are already in the process of scheduling exams, and we're already scheduling probably out to July, August with the backlog that we're starting to get because of the centers being closed. But certainly get in line, get your application into us, get that test date scheduled. And here's the test centers in alphabetical order: Berkeley, Fresno, Norwalk, Oxnard, Sacramento, San Bernardino, San Diego, and San Jose.
If you're an applicant whose first language isn't English and you don't feel confident taking your exams in English, we do allow you to use a translator. The translator who you provide simply reads you the exam questions. Question number 16 on the application asks if you would like to use a translator to complete your examination. The translator has to be approved by CSLB in advance. You cannot just show up on the day of your examination to the test center with someone to translate the exam for you. Also, we have study guides available for each of our exams currently right now on our website. Each of these study guides includes a list of sections and topics covered by the exam. They also include sample questions, how each section of the exam is weighted, and they recommended resources that you can use to prepare for the examination now. The study guides are available online on our website. When our test centers are back up and running and you get an exam date, make sure you don't miss it. If you fail to appear for exam, you'll have to pay a non-refundable $60 fee to reschedule. That fee may be waived once with documented evidence of a medical emergency or other circumstance beyond your control.
Okay, so here's how the test process works. At our test center, you'll take the exam on a touch screen computer. Before starting, you'll see an on-screen tutorial that'll take you through the process. The exam itself will consist of multiple choice questions. You'll also see a space on each question where you can, if you want, submit a comment about the question, provide us feedback. You'll get 3.5 hours to complete each exam, so don't arrive late, or that may reduce the amount of time you get to actually complete your exam. And you'll get the results at the end of the exam.
If you don't pass your exam, you're not going to be allowed to review the questions you missed, but you will get a statement showing how you did on each section of the exam. You can reschedule the exam as many times as you need to within an 18-month period, as long as you pay the non-refundable $60 rescheduling fee each time.
Yeah, pass the first time. That's always the best way to go, especially with the backlogs, because then you do have to get back in line to do it. So we would hate for you to take too much longer. Okay, so after you pass the exam, what happens next? First, you'll need to pay the $200 for your initial license fee, and that'll be good for 2 years. You'll also need to complete an online asbestos open book exam. Plus, you'll need to file your required $15,000 contractor's surety bond and possibly some other bonds depending on the type of business entity you have. Also, you'll need to get your required insurance policy. If you've got employees, you're going to need to get workers' comp insurance for them. If you're going to be an LLC, you'll also need liability insurance. So be sure to check our website and it'll show those amounts. Please also note that your insurance company or broker can submit your insurance information to CSLB directly on our website. If you don't have employees, you must file a workers' compensation exemption with CSLB, and you can do that online as well. So to be clear, if you do have employees, you have to get us the workers' comp insurance information. If you don't have employees, you have to certify with us under penalty of perjury that you don't have it, and then you're exempt from having to get workers' comp insurance.
So in about 5 to 10 business days, CSLB is going to send you a wall certificate and a plastic pocket license card. You're going to want to display the wall certificate in your main office or your chief place of business. Carry your pocket card with you, especially in situations when you're going to solicit business or talk to potential customers or you're going to sign contracts. We always encourage consumers to ask you to see your pocket license. If you're going to have a salesperson working for you, be sure to get them registered as a home improvement salesperson with CSLB. You can check out our website for more on how to do that. Your license is good for 2 years. It will expire on the line it was issued. If your license was issued today, May 11th, 2020, it's going to expire on May 31st, 2022. Be sure to put that expiration date on your calendar, in your phone, anywhere you need to so that you don't forget it. The CSLB does send you a renewal notice in the mail approximately 60 days before it expires, but ultimately it is your responsibility to make sure that you renew your license on time.
That sometimes becomes an issue because of this other important deadline. And if you have to notify CSLB within 30 days if you move or change your business address. Your renewal notice will be sent to the address of record that we've got on file. So if you're not there anymore, you're probably not going to get the renewal notice, and there's a chance that your renewal may not happen and you may have your license expire. Plus, the Postal Service will not forward state government mail. Finally, be sure to notify CSLB within 30 days of all changes to your personnel on your license, especially when it involves the qualifier of the license. Okay, so that is the main presentation. What we want to do is we want to get to your questions. So stand by a moment. I know a number of you have already submitted them. We want to go through the written questions, and then since we've put you folks through so much trouble, we will try to open it up and get some other questions. But let me at least pull up the questions that we've had submitted to us on email. Okay. Anna, how does one obtain a license during COVID times? Taya asks. And what I can say on that is, as I mentioned earlier, is right now the only things that are affected, the only CSLB services that are affected is our public counters are currently closed and our test centers are currently closed. We're continuing to process applications. All that continues. The criminal background checks, all of that continues. On our enforcement side, all our enforcement work continues. Everything continues with the exception of actually administering tests. So if you are going to be filing your application, get it in now, get in line, because as we've got some plans in place when we reopen our test centers to be able to expand the best we can, keeping social distancing in mind. We're going to potentially add additional exam times, maybe in the evenings and on weekends. So we're going to do our best to get through the backlog as quickly as we can. So the only thing affected right now are the giving out of the tests. Next question, Kelly asks, I'm applying for a C61D34 license to service and install wood gas pellet stoves. If I also wanted to offer handyman services in my business, would I need another classification as well, and which one? Anna, can I have you take that one?
Sure. So currently, CSLB doesn't have a handyman license. We gave a general information on the licenses that we do offer. If you go to our website, we do have the classification booklet, which describes what type of work you can do with each of the classifications that we offer. So you can start with that one. But as we mentioned, a license can have as many classifications as you can prove the experience for. So you can always begin with one classification and then add additional classifications to your license. But the same rules would apply. You would have to prove the 4 years of experience within the last 10 years.
Okay, next question. Tom says, I want to obtain a B license. Will my 20 years of being a building inspector work for my experience requirements?
What we would encourage you to do is go over the examples that we gave today to see if that's something that you could use as your experience. And just note what the B license does and if you what you did exactly. We're going to want to look at that work certification, and it's going to depend on how the person that's certifying, you select your certifier, they fill out the certification of work experience, and you go ahead and mail it and have them be as detailed what it is exactly you did. And if you have 4 years of experience within the last 10 years, we will take a look at it, and they'll look to see what exactly the duties you performed were.
Okay. Troy's question is fingerprints for all or just those with a criminal background? Fingerprints for everybody in the examples I gave, is, the applicants, the different qualifiers. Fingerprints for all, not only for people who have criminal backgrounds. Obviously, if you don't have any criminal background, much faster to pass those tests. Next one is for a family business in a corp entity. If the RMO passes away, what can we do if more than 90 days have passed? Anna. Also it continues on. Sorry. Can a family member who is part of the corporation and listed on the license still apply to save the license if it's past 90 days?
So as long as the application has been submitted to replace the qualifier, then an extension can be given. So you're going to want to work with our licensing division, and you can send them an email. You want to make sure they do grant extensions, but you're going to want to work with your technician. So you can send an email to that licensing@cslb.ca.gov.
Okay, next question. I've recently moved to the state of California from Tennessee. In Tennessee, I ran my own remodeling repair company with a general contractor's license for about 6 years. Our scope of work included everything from minor repairs to an entire basement remodel, bathroom remodel, etc. I performed a lot of other work myself, as well as with subcontractors for other tasks such as electrical, plumbing, installation, etc. I'd like to know how I can use all this experience I had as a licensed contractor in Tennessee doing a different scope of skills than in the state of California. Is there a specific license classification I can get?
Again, you're going to want to go ahead and see the different descriptions in our classification booklet to see if you meet the classification for it. It sounds like you were doing a little bit of everything, which is our B general contracting license. It's the general construction license. However, you want to make sure that you meet the read the description. There is a framing component to it. So if you have experience doing that, you want to definitely apply for the B license. But again, refer to the description of classification booklets, and they will let you know what work you can do with each classification that CSLB offers.
Okay, next, can you guys elaborate on the $500 limit an unlicensed handyman can do in the state of California? Is it $500 for the entire invoice or $500 per item? For instance, what if a client calls and needs a door adjustment, electrical and switch replacement, and a faucet replacement? Does that mean that a handyman cannot charge more than $500 to repair these 3 items, or is it per item not to exceed $500? The law says that it is the $500 for the total job. So if somebody calls you up and says, I need you to come over and adjust my door, to replace an electrical switch, and to replace a faucet, and that job is going to cost more than $500, that's considered one total job. So it would be the entire job over $500. Now, if he calls you up and says that you need to have my door adjusted, you come out and you do that for $100, and then a week or 2 down the road, he calls you up and say, I need my electrical switch replaced, and that's going to be another $200. That would be separate contracts. So each individual ones would be under the $500 limit. But if it's grouped together as one job, then it would total. If it totals more than $500, they would need a license. And then what you can't do is write three separate contracts up the same day, because if something happens and then they look at that and they have that, the law is going to look at that as you trying to get around the $500 limit. You don't want to break it up into small jobs to get around the law. Tammy says, one is renewal for my C33 painter's license. His license expired. He has the forms and the cashier's check. Can we mail his renewal with the payment? When is testing any idea? Then, I'm sorry, that one doesn't, I'm not understanding that right, so I'll try to read it one more time. Tammy says, she has two questions. One is for renewal of a C33 painting contractor with an expired license. He has the form and cashier's check. Can we mail in the renewal with the payment? Okay. Anna, can you talk about past expiration? If you are trying to renew a license, what the rules are, when you can, and how long you have in case it's been years since you've actually had your license expire?
Sure. So depending on when the license expired, you're going to want to go ahead and you can contact our 800 number, and they can look up the license for you and see when it expired. As far as it says, when is testing any idea? So you're testing. The good thing about testing, the testing results are good for 5 years. So as long as you pass the law and the trade within the last 5 years, you wouldn't have to retest. But it just depends when this one was renewed. But for specific situations, you can call our 800 number, give them your license number, and they can provide exact information.
Okay, and her second question talks about a C-17 Glazier. Says he's been in the industry for 20 years and is going out on his own. We're filling out his application and work experience this week. He already has the study package and will be ready to take the test. Same question, can we mail the application and payment and get in line for testing? Yes, we're continuing to process tests, and you absolutely can. Okay, correct. Next, Sharon says, where do you find apprenticeship programs? Anna.
There are different apprenticeship programs. There's different schools that offer programs. Again, we don't, we're not affiliated with any of the schools, so there's none that we can recommend or say, this is one's better than the other. We do know that there are some schools that offer to help prepare you for the exam, and that's different. There is no educational requirement for the exam. We don't know where these schools are getting our test questions. They're often, guaranteeing that you're going to pass your exam. We don't share our questions with them, so we don't know what questions they're giving you. In the past, we have heard of applicants who have paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars to these schools, and are thinking that they're going to be able to pass the exam, and then they get to take the exam, and not one of the questions that was given by these schools is on the exam. So caution with the exams, with the schools that say that they will prepare you for the examination. Apprenticeship programs, like I said, there's different options are out there available for you to research.
Yeah, and a lot of the unions as well have apprenticeship programs, so that's another opportunity to get into apprenticeships as well. Next question. Here's my problem. I've been working with my uncle and my dad full-time for 13 years, do lots of jobs on my own. 5 years ago, I tried to get my license, but then it mentions a specific contracting school was asking me to have a contractor sign some paper for me, and he couldn't get it done. I kept working, but would love to be licensed. I think that kind of gets what we're talking about, being able to document your experience. And in some cases, you do need to have that, in all cases, you have to have that certifier be able to document that. So if you're somebody working now and are trying to work towards that experience, maybe you don't have all of the 4 years, is be sure you're saving things, anything from to pay stubs to if you're out buying materials, things like that. And are there things that we haven't mentioned yet that they would want to hold on to now if they're trying to get all of that information together?
Just one thing that comes to mind is remember that the certifier is a person that you choose that has firsthand knowledge that you have this experience. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the contractor that you work for. We understand that many times you don't want to have them sign your work certification. That's okay. As long as you find somebody who does have the knowledge, firsthand knowledge that you have that level of experience that is willing to fill out the certification, we will definitely take a look at it.
Okay, the next question is getting a little specific. Just remember, we'll offer what feedback we can on this. It says, I'm planning to apply for a general contractor's license. A couple questions regarding certification of the work experience. On the part 2, which is the certification portion, they're asking if the kinds of scopes that they're listing here are considered higher than the journeyman level. So one is on-site construction management, on-site inspection, on-site quality assurance control, or resident engineer. And are we?
So we did talk about the supervising employee. We gave a couple of examples. So you're going to want to go back through we will have this on our website. You're going to want to go back through the presentation and look at examples and see if that's something that you can use. Like we said, apply it to the duties that you have performed in the past. But you may want to look at that, the supervising employee scope.
How about photos, Anna? Can photos be used to help document things?
Unfortunately, because we can't verify the authenticity of the photos, we don't know if that was work that you actually performed or when these photos were taken. No, we wouldn't be able to use photos.
Okay. My husband currently works in a pressure washing company, would love to get a license. He speaks more Spanish and understands English. Is it possible for him to obtain his license? Well, we did mention that if he has difficulties with being able to take his test in English, we do have the ability to use a translator, but you don't want to just show up with a translator. You have to get that approved in advance. There is information on the website, so that certainly wouldn't keep you from being able to get your license. How long on average does the application take to be approved?
That varies. Unfortunately we have no control over how long the fingerprint process can take. So it's going to be different for in every situation. We also mentioned that a small percentage of the applications are selected to go through additional background information. And so we would, that also affects. What we do have on our website right now is we do have processing time. So you can look online to see what date of applications we're working on, and that will give you more or less an idea.
And what I could tell you too, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is because our test centers have been closed for about the last month and a half or so, we're probably getting between 120, 125 applications a day, or exams a day. So probably, since many people take 2 exams, so we're probably getting 60 or 70 more people applying and then having to take a test. So that number is now up around between 7,000 and 8,000. And so we've got test centers all over the state, so we can give hundreds of exams out a day. But it's probably, right now, if you're doing that, you're probably not going to be able to get tested to probably towards July or August. So that's just the reality of it, is because our test centers, when we do reopen it, hopefully in the next few weeks, we're going to extend and give it additional test times during the day, but we're going to also have to cut our test sites down because of social distancing. We're making some accommodations right now to try to get ready for that, but the reality of it is going to take a little bit of time to get your license. Okay, will you have your in-person workshop in May in Sacramento? No, we are not. The office is still closed, so we're not allowed to, but once the offices do open up, if we can get that figured out, we will do that again in person. We are going to hopefully expand these online. We're working out the kinks, obviously, in this one, but we're going to plan on doing it and are happy to do it as many times as possible, as often as it's needed. If we need to do it every week, we'd be happy to do them every week. Can we please, I'm sorry, Anna, I don't want to commit you to doing it every week, but I will do it every week by myself if I have to. Can you please discuss going from a B license to an A license? The B license, general contracting. The A license is the general engineering. And is that a common thing for a B to add an A, or what kinds of things do you look at?
So we did mention, right, we mentioned that once you have a license, you can have as many classifications as you can prove the work experience for. So let's say that you start with the B license, that's the general construction license, and then you want to add the A classification. That you can do that is possible. You would file the additional classification application. It's a much simpler form. You would submit that, send in the fee. It's $150 to add a classification to your license. When you renew, you only pay one renewal fee, and all of the classifications are under one license. So you don't have to pay a different renewal fee for each classification. It would be one renewal fee. And so you would go ahead and submit that. You would come back and take the exam only for the A classification or whatever classification you were trying to add on. Once you successfully pass the examination, we would add that classification to your license.
Okay, next question. If I need a C12 license, can I also get a C27 and C36? And I think you mentioned this a little earlier about one at a time, but if you can just kind of repeat that information.
Sure. So you're going to start with one classification when you send in your application. However, you can continue to apply for different classifications and have as many classifications under your license. As long as the same rules apply, you need to be able to provide 4 years of experience within the last 10 years.
Next question is from somebody who had their own company out of state where they worked as a contractor, and they want to say who would serve as my certifier. So this again would be something where you need to have some paperwork to, if you're self-certifying for the work, or Anna, do you want to go through that again? But just, it's the same kinds of things as you would certify if you're here in California.
So correct. And somebody has to sign the work certificate. Somebody has to sign it. So it could be somebody in Tennessee. We would be willing to take a certifier from Tennessee. It doesn't matter if they're out of the state. But what we really want them to do is pay attention to that section where they're going to tell us what duties you performed. And if you had your own company, were you licensed at the time, that information. So same process. 4 years within the last 10 years, we'll definitely take a look at it, even if it was out of the state.
Okay. If I get my license as a sole proprietor, can I later become a corporation or LLC, or do I have to reapply as the business?
So when you're applying for a license, changing an entity, you will have to submit another application. You won't have to take the examination as long as your license has been in a good standing, but you will have to apply for the different entity. Also, when you are filing for a partnership and let's say one of the partners leaves, that partnership then becomes dissolved. And then if you wanted to continue, let's say as a sole proprietor, or if you wanted to become a corporation at that time, you would have to submit an application.
Okay. How often are tests given? With the COVID backlog, will it be more frequent? I kind of mentioned that we test 5 days a week right now, but there's 2 different sessions. As I mentioned, each test session is 3.5 hours to complete each exam. So we run 2 of those test sessions a day. Chances are very good when we resume, we're going to be adding at least one more to do a third one. It'll probably go into the evening. And it's likely that we'll be adding some sessions on the weekends as well to try to get that backlog down. Next question. If you've worked as for a global engineer, general contracting in heavy civil, building environmental, and the power sectors as a chief estimator for the last 25 years, does this qualify for experience for the A, B, and C22 license?
Okay, so you're going to want to have, you have to select one to begin with. When you submit your application, you can only choose one classification. So you're going to want to look at our classification booklet, see what work you can do with the A, the B, and the C22. See which one you would like to go with first. Once your license is issued, then you can submit to add the other classifications to your license.
Okay, and we've got just a couple of written ones down. So if you happen to have something that you want to ask us, if you could, if you see on the WebEx, one thing you can do is you can raise your hand. We'll try that to keep it organized since we have 29 people online right now. But if you have any questions you want to add, I've got a couple more, actually one more question at least to get through here. And then if we have, we'll try to open it up to get a few more questions here. I had a California general contractor's license, then moved out of state. I did not pay my fees to keep my inactive license. It's been now more than 5 years. Do I need proof of 4 years of experience, or will my previous license suffice?
I'm assuming it says it's been more than 5 years, but if it's been within the last 10 years, when you fill out your application, it does ask you if you've been licensed in the past. You list your license number there, and then we will take a look at it. If it was in good standing, there's so many variable factors. So go ahead and send us an email with your license number, and we can answer that question for you.
Yeah, I'll have this at the end too. I'll repeat it, but there is a direct email address you can send things to licensing. It's licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Actually, I'll forward the slide to it so you can see it. But licensing at cslb.ca.gov. There it is too. Okay, actually, a couple more questions just came in, so I'll go through those. Where can I download the workshop? What you need to do is go to our website, which is cslb.ca.gov. Right up at the very top, there's a banner right underneath the pinkish red COVID banner. There's a bluish one which talks about this workshop. And you'll see a workshop presentation. You click on that, you'll get the PDF. Do I wait for fingerprint results before sending the application, or do I send the fingerprint results with the application?
So you're going to want to submit your application. We will send you the fingerprint information once we have your application. So you don't want to send it with it. It's after you've applied. We send you an acknowledgement letter letting you know that we received your application. We will send you fingerprinting information.
Okay, for corporate and LLC, when does the entity need to be set up? Before or after the application process? I want to know how to avoid setting up a corporation LLC with a name that CSLB may reject.
So for your corporation or LLC, you're going to want to set that up before you apply. If you notice, we talked about on the application, you will have to set up your entity with the Secretary of State. They will give you a corporation number, your LLC number, and that number has to be on your application. So you're going to want to go register that first with the Secretary of State prior to applying with CSLB. As far as names that CSLB may reject, as long as your name is not misleading, it has to be compatible with your entity and also with your classification. And we gave some examples earlier. So as long as it's compatible, then it would not be rejected.
If I create an LLC in California with a second person, only one of us needs to be licensed, correct? Or correct, sorry, needed to emphasize the question at that. So if they create an LLC with a second person, does only one of them need to be licensed?
As far as your LLC, whoever is listed on your LLC with the Secretary of State, we do match our record. So you're going to want to make sure however you have your LLC registered with Secretary of State, that's what's on your application. It has to be the same.
For a General B license, I understand higher education can count towards 3 of the 4 years of work experience. However, you've mentioned that not all education applies. I have a 4-year mechanical engineering bachelor's degree and a 2-year master's degree in business MBA. Is it likely that the full 3 years of work experience will be recognized in my case?
So we do get the education question quite a bit. People want to know how can I know ahead of time how much experience credit I'm going to get for my education? Unfortunately, there is no one available to look at your transcripts ahead of time. We won't know until we actually receive your transcripts, have them in front of us, and then we will look at how much credit you can get. The maximum is 3 years, and it sounds like you may be there, but we won't know that. We can't confirm that until we actually have your transcripts along with your application.
Next one, we got a couple more here. I worked with a general contractor as a 4-person in the capacity of a business associate. However, I was not paid for my services in order to gain experience. How would this work experience be validated if required? So unpaid work.
If that person would unpaid work. Unpaid work does qualify as a work experience, but it just needs to be that person needs to fill out your certificate of work experience. So as long as they list the information, they have to be very specific on the duties that you performed while working. Would look.
Yep. I hope most of that came through.
Rick and Anna, sorry, that was my question.
Oh.
Unfortunately, a response didn't come through there. You think you could take the time to maybe repeat that one?
Yeah, Anna, could you try again? Because you were breaking up a lot in that one, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? Was it the 4-person in the capacity of a business associate without being paid? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So his question was, I worked with a general contractor as a 4-person in the capacity of a business associate. However, I was not paid for my services. It doesn't matter if you were paid or not paid. We would still consider the work experience. So what you would want to do is have that person fill out your work certificate, be very detailed with the duties that you performed, and then we would consider that experience. We would see how much credit you could get for the time that you were there. It does not matter if the work was paid or not paid.
All right, thank you.
You bet. If the licensed individual passes away, then the unlicensed person needs to find a newly licensed person to continue running the business. That sounds, I'm not sure there if that means that the licensed individual who passed away, were they running the business, or was this were they a qualifier and then this person wants to continue doing it? If that's the case, then yes. If the person who qualified the license dies, then they need to get a new qualifier, whether that's going to be somebody else or maybe this unlicensed person may have enough experience at this point where they can apply and try to get a license themselves. Anna, can you mention that there are deadlines on when you have to notify? I think we talked about a 30-day notification
Right.
if
Um,
qualifier
right.
changes.
So there are limitations. If somebody passes away, you need to let CSLB know right away. Also, if whoever took the exam, the qualifier of the license, let's say that person decides to leave the company, you have 90 days to replace that qualifier. However, you have to let us know right away and let us know who your new qualifier will be.
Can a self-employed person apply for a B license? I think we've kind of touched on that. Obviously, the big issue is being able to meet the experience, but you can use experience from being self-employed to
Yes.
apply for your license. That will qualify. Okay, I'm looking at my list here for hands up, and I see one from Manuel. Manuel, did you have a question? I'll open up your mic here. Manuel, did you have a question for us?
Yes, I was wondering if you have any study guides for the test, like for the law and trade.
Yeah, probably for the
Sure.
long. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Anna.
So they are available on our website. You can go on our website now and in the search engine put study guides, and there will be one for the law and business and one for every trade that we offer. And like we mentioned, it's good information. It has information, it lets you know what subjects are going to be covered on the examination. It gives you a couple of sample test questions. It gives you the test site policy, what you can and cannot bring to the test. On the back, it also provides you a list of resources, books, websites that you could start researching now, start studying now in order to prepare for the exam.
And the other thing I would add to that is for the business and law part is we do have every year we come out with a California Contractors license law and resource book. And there's the first 150 pages or so of the book is good background. It's a lot of the kinds of things you're going to be tested on for the business and law. You can download that for free on our website. So if you just go to our website in the search bar, put 2020 license or 2020 contract law book, 2020 law book, it should get you right to that. If you wanted to buy a copy of it, it's like 1,100 pages long. I think it's $35 or $40 if you wanted to buy it, but it is available for a free download.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. Okay, and let me.
One came through the email.
Thank you. Yes. So to clarify, if we have a 2-member LLC, both individuals have to take the test to get the license.
No, so a 2-member LLC will have one person is going to be the qualifier. The qualifier is a person who takes the examination. So only one person has to take the exam. The other individual will be listed on the license, but they do not have to take the examination. The license is then issued to the LLC.
Okay. Next question. There is no electronic application, ? Do we have to physically mail in papers? Yes, actually, we are currently developing an online application, but that it's not ready yet, but it will be in the next few months. So at the moment, we're still doing it on paper. So yeah, fill out the paperwork, everything we've talked about during this, and get that to us.
Mm-hmm. You do have the option of filling it out online, but you can't submit it online just yet. So if you fill it out online, the benefit of that is, as you can see, there are several sections to our application. So you can't move on to section 2 until you've completed section 1. So it's a good idea to fill it out online, print it, just make sure you sign it before mailing it in.
Okay, a couple more questions that we get asked a lot at our other workshops. We haven't gotten asked today, but it might be something somebody didn't think or didn't want to ask. Do we have to have workers' comp insurance for family members who will be working with you performing office work?
So we get that question a lot. Do we have to have workers' comp if it's a family member, somebody that's just helping us for one day or one project, or it's going to be in the office? The answer is, if somebody is not listed on your license, then yes, you would have to have workers' comp insurance. It doesn't matter if they're a relative or not. We would see them as an employee, and you would have to have workers' comp if they're not listed on the application.
Okay. You said my license is good for 2 years. After that, do I have to retake the test again? No, you do not. As long as you keep that license going, you just have to take it once. What if my boss doesn't want to sign my certification of work experience? Are there any ways around that?
Okay, so we mentioned that it does not have to necessarily be the person that you worked for. It can be another contractor. In fact, if you look at the work certification, there are several different categories at the bottom that you can choose. It could be a fellow coworker, different categories at the bottom of the form that you'll want to look at to see who can certify your work experience.
Great. At this point, is there anybody else who has any questions? You guys have bared with us, so we wanted to be sure everybody gets everything answered.
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Nicholas. So if you get rejected for lack of work experience, what are the chances of getting the application accepted afterwards? Because I was told by a contractor that if you get rejected, it's near impossible to get the application accepted if you reapply.
Now, were you close on work experience? Were you close to the 4 years, or?
I am close. I have not applied yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned that my lack of work experience will potentially get me rejected.
Okay. Anna?
We encourage applicants to make sure that they meet the 4-year experience requirements. And like we said, you can begin to gather that information now. Even if you're not selected, it's a good idea to be able to prove. Remember, the burden of proof does fall on the applicant. You have to be able to prove that you have these 4 years.
Absolutely.
So as long as you have some, you're going to want to look at the publication that we discussed. What is acceptable, what is not acceptable, documentation to verify your work experience. As long as you can verify the 4 years, you should be okay.
Great. And as far as forms and everything is on the website. If you're not sure, we do have a section that's just forms. You can scroll through that or use the search bar on the homepage. That's often the fastest way to find something. Type in, application, type in, whatever you're looking for if you're having problems finding it. Okay. Last call for questions. My initial question there was, with a 4-year engineering degree and a 2-year master's degree in business, you said you look at the transcripts. Is it the grades? Is it the type of courses? Because in general, a bachelor's in engineering and a business degree is pretty standard. That's why I was asking about the likelihood of that counting towards 3 years work experience or not. But I'm unsure even with the answers you've provided.
The most we would be able to give you is 3 years. But unfortunately, without the transcript in front of us, we wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't be able to let you know how much we would be able to give you, but the max would be 3 years. Yes.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to understand is what is it about the transcripts? Is it the grades or is it the type of courses? Because a bachelor's degree in engineering and a master's in business is pretty standard, right? What the transcripts won't necessarily tell you. It'll tell you the grades. And
we're looking for construction related courses. Yes.
So you're looking at coursework, not necessarily the grades, but
Correct.
The coursework.
Well, then, my likelihood is that it would, there's not too much construction necessarily in a business master's degree or in an engineering degree. If it's a mechanical engineering degree, these construction courses are very specific if it's like architecture or something like that. That's why I'm trying to gauge, hey, should I submit my application? Because I need to have those 3 years from higher education because I don't have too much, practical experience. So the 3 years is pretty critical for me. That's why I'm trying to understand really specifically whether they will be counted or not.
Mm-hmm. I understand. And it sounds like you would qualify for that. But if you want, what you can do is send an email to our licensing staff, licensing at CSLB.ca.gov, and let them know the particulars, because I understand you want, you're banking on the 3 years. So send them an email and then somebody will get back to you. And that is a question that we receive a lot about the education. So people do use the education.
And be sure that to let them know you talk to us and you were in this online workshop and we suggested that you send the email. There's got to be a benefit for you guys sitting through an hour and a half of us here. So and if you have to drop Anna's name, don't drop my name in there. Just drop Anna's name. She'll help you get through the system.
All right, thanks, Rick. Thanks, Anna.
You bet. And one of the questions that popped up on my screen talked about can subcontractors be used to certify work experience as well? If you worked on jobs and there were subs that knew what you were doing.
Yes, a contractor, a licensed contractor is one of the categories. So you're going to want to go ahead and select that box, and it asks for the license number. They can absolutely certify work experience.
Terrific. Well, we are going to go ahead and actually, I'll take one last look.
I think there was the question
So as
about reciprocity, question 30.
Oh, you go ahead and read it and answer it then. I'm probably missing. Oh, there it is. Okay. What changes the process if you have a license in one of the states that California recognizes reciprocity with? There are, I think, 3 states that we have reciprocity with. I might be missing one, but we've got, if you're currently a licensee in Nevada, in Arizona, in, I believe, Utah. And I think for one of the classifications, I think we got like North Carolina or somewhere back east. We have a reciprocity page on our website. What it can do is it can help waive you having to take the trade exam. You're still going to need to take the California Business and Law exam. But there are cases where the reciprocity is going to get you to be able to bypass having to take the specific trade exam. So look at the website. They've got a bunch of information. They show the different classifications in those different states. So as a remodeling contractor, I did a large scope of projects, including framing, electrical, plumbing. I would still qualify without ground up building of an entire structure, correct? I did additions with all scopes.
Yes, it looks like you have the framing experience, and you have experience in different trades. So you want to go ahead and refer to our classification booklet and look at the B classification to see if you meet the requirements. But it does sound like, since you do have experience with the framing, that would be the appropriate classification. But you, in fact, the experience that you have.
Okay. All right, great. That is all the questions I see there. It's last call. If anybody has a question, open up your mic, and if not, we're going to go ahead and wrap up now. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Then again, on the screen, you do see some information with our email addresses. So we'd encourage you to email our licensing division if you have licensing questions at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. If at some point you need to reschedule an exam, you can kind of file that one away. That is exams@cslb.ca.gov for that information. And that concludes our workshop. So an archive version at some point we hope will be placed on our CSLB YouTube page. Give us some time here. We got some editing to do here with all our challenges we had. We do welcome your comments or topics for future webcasts, so just drop us an email, and that address is the same one we use for the questions for this one, social@cslb.ca.gov. Special thanks go today to Justin Paddock, Charlotte Allison, Elizabeth Robinson, Henry DeWong, Anna Galindo, Kayla Bosley, Claire Goldstein, Kevin Duraway, Amber Foreman, and Amy Lawrence. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is copyrighted by the Contractor State License Board. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day. Thanks again for your patience on working with us and moving over to WebEx with us. And please be sure to drop us any comments you can. If not, stay safe and have a great day.